Thank you all for being here today. I want to talk about something real, something raw, something that we all carry with us, even though we might not always talk about it. It's that moment when life brings us to our knees. We've all been there, haven't we? Maybe it was a relationship that ended, a career setback, a mistake that we can't seem to forgive ourselves for, or a dream that felt so close but somehow slipped away. We know what it's like to feel broken, to feel like we're at the bottom, wondering if we'll ever feel whole again. But here's the thing I want you to hear today: you will rise again. Not because the pain is going to magically disappear, not because the situation will get better overnight, but because you're made of something resilient, something that cannot be erased by a single moment or experience, no matter how painful. Now, rising doesn't mean we ignore the pain, that we gloss over it and pretend it's not there. No, rising means facing it. It means letting ourselves feel what we need to feel without judgment, without shame. It's about letting ourselves be vulnerable. And I know that can be terrifying. Vulnerability sounds like weakness, but it's the most honest strength there is. It's choosing to open up, to show up, even when the outcome isn't certain. Rising is the work of courage. And courage, let me tell you, doesn't always look brave. Sometimes courage looks like getting out of bed when your heart feels too heavy. Sometimes it's letting someone see you even when you're convinced you'll be rejected. It's saying, I'm not okay right now, and letting others walk with you. Courage is small, it's quiet, it's messy, and it's the thing that keeps us going. You may not feel ready. None of us ever really do. But rising isn't about having it all figured out. It's about taking one small step and then another, and trusting that each step forward, however uncertain, is leading you somewhere better. It's also about self-compassion. We have this way of holding ourselves to impossible standards. We believe we should be invulnerable, unbreakable. But the truth is, real strength isn't found in being invulnerable. It's in allowing ourselves to be seen, flaws and all. It's giving ourselves permission to be human. So as you rise, remember to forgive yourself. Give yourself the grace to start again without carrying the weight of everything you think you should have done differently. When you look back, you'll see that every time you felt knocked down, every time you've thought, this is it, I can't go on, you did. You got back up. You didn't just survive, you adapted, you grew, you became someone stronger, someone wiser. And if there's one thing I believe with all my heart, it's this: resilience isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you build. It's in the moments you keep going, even when it's hard. It's in the choice to believe that, yes, life can be difficult, but you are stronger than you know. So to every single one of you, you will rise again. And when you do, you'll find that the person you become on the other side of this will be braver, kinder, and more compassionate. You'll know what it means to come through something hard, to come out the other side, and to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I did that. I'm here. And that's where true strength lies. That's where the journey begins again. When we experience pain, whether through loss, failure, or disappointment, our first instinct is often to turn away, to avoid feeling the full impact of it. Its natural pain is uncomfortable, and our minds and bodies are wired to seek comfort and safety. Yet, if we're ever going to move forward, if we're going to rise from those moments when we feel utterly broken, we must start by facing what hurts. Acknowledging pain isn't just about saying, I'm hurt. It's about allowing ourselves to feel, to sit with that discomfort without judgment, and to understand that this acknowledgement is the first essential step in the healing process. When we avoid pain, we don't make it go away, we simply bury it, sometimes so deeply that we lose sight of what's causing the suffering in the first place. And while that might work temporarily, the truth is that those feelings of hurt, shame, disappointment, or anger will always find a way to surface eventually. It may come out as irritability, anxiety, or even as a numbness that keeps us from feeling anything at all. But when we let ourselves feel the full weight of our pain, we're giving it the space it needs to be understood and eventually released. Facing pain requires vulnerability, and vulnerability, though often perceived as weakness, is one of the most powerful acts of courage we can engage in. Being vulnerable means allowing ourselves to be honest about our emotions. It's telling ourselves that it's okay to feel disappointed, scared, or angry without rushing to get rid of those feelings. Our culture tends to glorify strength, resilience, and perseverance, often forgetting that real strength comes from the willingness to face difficult emotions rather than brushing them aside. Acknowledging pain also means resisting the urge to downplay or dismiss it. How many times have we said it's not a big deal or other people have it worse? These statements come from a well-intentioned place, maybe even from a place of gratitude, but they can minimize our own experience and make it harder for us to truly understand and heal from what we're feeling. Each person's pain is unique and valid. And the only way to begin healing is by giving ourselves permission to feel it fully, just as it is. Part of acknowledging pain is also understanding its role. Pain is uncomfortable, but it isn't without purpose. It can be a signal, a teacher, and even a guide. Pain often points us to areas of our lives that need attention or change. Maybe it's a sign that we need to set boundaries, that we're not living in alignment with our values, or that we've neglected parts of ourselves that need nurturing. When we allow ourselves to sit with our pain, we can begin to listen to what it's trying to tell us. Rather than seeing pain as an enemy to be defeated, we can view it as an experience to be understood and learn from. Acknowledging pain is an act of self-compassion too. When we allow ourselves to feel, we're practicing acceptance. We're saying to ourselves, I don't have to be perfect, I don't have to be okay all the time. This acceptance is a form of kindness that can create a safe space within ourselves, a place where we can be real without judgment. This safe space is crucial for healing, as it allows us to feel understood and supported, even if it's just by ourselves. When we acknowledge our pain, we allow others to support us. So often we're afraid of showing our pain to the people around us because we fear judgment or rejection. We think we should be strong and independent, able to handle anything on our own. But by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with those we trust, we invite connection. We let others see that we're human, that we have struggles just like everyone else. This act of openness can deepen our relationships and remind us that we're not alone in our experience of pain. It takes courage to let others in, but the support and connection we find in doing so are invaluable. Sometimes acknowledging pain even brings unexpected relief. There's a power in naming our emotions and admitting to ourselves that we're hurting. When we name what we're feeling, we give it shape and form, which makes it easier to understand and process. It becomes less overwhelming and more manageable, and we realize that it's something we can move through rather than something that has to define us. And so in the end, acknowledging pain is a foundational step toward healing and rising again. By facing what hurts, we begin to untangle the emotions that weigh us down. We create space for self-compassion, invite support from those around us, and open ourselves to understanding the deeper lessons that pain can bring. It's a process that can feel daunting, but with each moment of honest acknowledgement, we lay the groundwork for a new beginning, one built not on avoidance, but on genuine understanding and acceptance of ourselves. To rise from a place of struggle, vulnerability becomes not just an option, but a necessity. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as a weakness, as something that leaves us exposed, open to judgment or harm. And that's not completely wrong. Vulnerability does open us up, but it's not an invitation to be weak. It's an invitation to be real. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we're embracing the fullness of what it means to be human. We're acknowledging that life isn't always easy, that we don't always have the answers, and that sometimes we need help. Embracing vulnerability means letting down our defenses, setting aside the masks we wear, and showing up as we are, flaws and all. This is not easy. The world often teaches us that success and happiness come from control, from perfection, from being unbreakable. We're conditioned to think that if we're struggling, it's our fault, that if we're not thriving, we should work harder, push ourselves more, and not let anyone see us sweat. But vulnerability asks us to take a different approach. It asks us to acknowledge that perfection is an illusion, that being human means sometimes stumbling and falling. One of the most powerful aspects of vulnerability is that it allows us to create true connections. When we're willing to share our struggles, our fears, and our insecurities, we invite others to do the same. Vulnerability creates a space where others feel safe to let down their own walls and show up authentically. We often feel alone in our struggles because we keep them hidden, assuming that no one else could understand. But when we dare to be vulnerable, we discover that others have been there too. Our struggles are not unique to us. They are part of the shared human experience. In many ways, vulnerability is a practice of courage. It takes courage to show up, not knowing what will happen next, not having guarantees of success or acceptance. Imagine walking into a room full of people and choosing to be honest about something you're struggling with. That's a moment of bravery. It's scary because you're opening yourself up to being judged, misunderstood, or rejected. But it's also powerful because it's real. When we choose vulnerability, we're saying, this is who I am in all my complexity, and I'm okay with being seen. That's a profound act of self-acceptance. There's a certain freedom in vulnerability, too. When we let go of the need to appear perfect or invincible, we free ourselves from the exhausting task of keeping up appearances. Trying to be flawless all the time is draining. It keeps us from living fully. Vulnerability, on the other hand, allows us to take risks, to pursue our dreams, to engage with life wholeheartedly. We don't have to worry about whether we're enough, or if we'll succeed every time. Vulnerability says, I'm here, I'm giving this my best shot, and whatever happens, I'm okay with it. This openness is what allows us to learn, grow, and truly experience life. Embracing vulnerability also means letting go of shame. Shame is a powerful force that tells us we're not good enough, that we should hide parts of ourselves. It whispers, what if they find out you're not as strong as they think? But vulnerability counters shame by bringing everything into the open. When we own our story, shame loses its grip. By admitting our fears, our doubts, and our mistakes, we're telling ourselves and others, I'm not perfect, but I'm worthy. Vulnerability takes the power out of shame by turning it into self-acceptance. Sometimes vulnerability means admitting we don't have it all together and that we need support. For many, this is one of the hardest things to do because it feels like weakness. We don't want to be a burden, and we worry about what others will think. But asking for help is one of the most human things we can do. It's a reminder that we're not alone and that it's okay to lean on others. In fact, it strengthens our relationships by allowing others to show up for us, just as we would for them. Another aspect of vulnerability is acknowledging uncertainty. None of us know what the future holds, and that's both terrifying and liberating. Vulnerability asks us to live in the present, to embrace each moment without trying to control the outcome. When we're vulnerable, we're open to life's possibilities, even the ones that may scare us. We're willing to try new things, to step into the unknown, because we know that whatever happens, we'll find a way through it. Finally, vulnerability is a reminder of our resilience. It's easy to think of resilience as toughness, as the ability to bounce back without feeling anything. But true resilience is born out of vulnerability. It's the ability to feel deeply, to face our fears, and to keep going anyway. Each time we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we're strengthening our capacity to handle life's challenges. Vulnerability teaches us that we don't have to be perfect to be strong, we just have to be willing to show up, to be honest, and to try again. When we embrace vulnerability, we're embracing life itself with all its highs and lows, its joys and hard hatches. We're saying yes to the full spectrum of human experience, and in doing so, we discover a strength we never knew we had. It's a path to genuine connection, to self-acceptance, and to the courage it takes to rise time and time again. Courage isn't always grand or earth-shattering. More often, it's found in the quiet moments, in the small, everyday steps we take to keep moving forward, even when life feels heavy. We often think of courage as something that belongs to heroes, as a characteristic of those who are brave in extraordinary circumstances. But courage also belongs to those of us who are simply trying to get through the day, one moment at a time, even when we don't feel ready, even when we're afraid. Sometimes, courage is getting out of bed when everything in you wants to stay hidden away. It's choosing to face the world, even when you're uncertain or weary. In these moments, courage may not feel particularly heroic. There's no applause or recognition, and it might not even feel significant at the time. But these small acts of showing up are no less valuable than grand gestures. In fact, they're the building blocks of resilience. Each time we choose to engage with life, even when it's hard, we're reinforcing our ability to rise again. Courage can also look like taking that one small step toward a goal, even when the end seems far out of reach. When we feel overwhelmed by the enormity of a situation, breaking it down into manageable steps makes it more approachable. Taking things one step at a time, one day at a time, requires a quiet courage. It's the courage to be patient with ourselves, to trust the process, and to believe that each step forward is meaningful. Sometimes it's easy to feel that if we're not making big leaps, we're not making progress at all. But small steps add up, and every bit of forward motion is a victory in itself. In those moments when everything feels uncertain, courage becomes a choice rather than a feeling. We often think of courage as the absence of fear, but real courage is acting in spite of fear. It's deciding that the value of moving forward is greater than the comfort of staying safe or hidden. This kind of courage asks us to accept that we can't always control what will happen. All we can control is our willingness to take the next step, however small. Whether it's speaking up for ourselves, asking for help, or setting a boundary, each of these actions requires courage, and each one strengthens us, even when we can't yet see the results. At times, courage also means allowing ourselves to be seen. We live in a world where there's often pressure to appear like we have it all together, to show only our best selves. But it takes a different kind of courage to admit that we're struggling, to reach out and say, I'm not okay right now. Vulnerability in this sense is a profound act of courage. It's letting others see us as we truly are, without the filters or masks we might be tempted to wear. When we allow ourselves to be open about our struggles, we break down the walls that keep us isolated, and we give others the opportunity to connect with us on a deeper level. Courage can also mean trying again after a setback. When we fail or face disappointment, it's natural to feel hesitant about putting ourselves out there once more. Yet each time we choose to try again, we're reclaiming our power over the situation. We're telling ourselves that failure or disappointment doesn't define us, it's just a part of the process. Picking ourselves up and trying again is an act of resilience, and it's a testament to the strength we're cultivating within. Even the act of asking for support takes courage. Many of us feel pressure to handle things on our own, believing that independence is a measure of strength. But courage is about recognizing when we need others and reaching out when we do. It's okay to lean on the people who care about us, to accept that we're not meant to do everything alone. By asking for help, we're honoring our own needs, and we're also allowing others to be there for us in meaningful ways. In doing so, we create a network of support that makes us stronger together. One of the most challenging forms of everyday courage is the choice to forgive both ourselves and others. We all make mistakes, and we all encounter situations where we feel wronged. Holding on to resentment or self-blame might feel protective, but it often keeps us stuck. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is an act of courage that allows us to move forward. It's a way of releasing the hold that past hurts or mistakes have over us, making room for growth and healing. Each of these small acts of courage might seem minor on its own, but together they build a foundation of resilience. Courage isn't about doing everything perfectly or never feeling afraid. It's about showing up, again and again, in whatever way we can. Whether we're taking big leaps or small steps, every act of courage counts, and each one brings us closer to becoming the person we want to be. So while courage might sometimes look like heroic acts, it's just as often found in the ordinary, everyday choices we make. It's in the commitment to keep going, to keep showing up, even when it feels difficult. This everyday courage, though quiet and often unnoticed, is what ultimately allows us to rise, to grow, and to thrive in the face of whatever challenges life may bring. Self-compassion is one of the most profound gifts we can give ourselves, especially when life feels uncertain or we're struggling with setbacks. It means approaching ourselves with kindness and understanding rather than harshness and judgment. So often, when we stumble or don't meet our own expectations, our immediate response is to criticize ourselves, to think I should have done better, or why can't I handle this like everyone else? Yet, self-compassion invites us to look at ourselves through a gentler lens, to recognize that just as we would be kind and supportive toward a friend in a similar situation, we too deserve that same level of care and empathy from ourselves. Being compassionate with ourselves can feel counterintuitive. We live in a world that often equates self-worth with productivity and success, a world that teaches us that we should be tough on ourselves to improve. We're conditioned to believe that we'll only become better if we push harder, achieve more, and refuse to accept anything less than perfection. But self-compassion challenges that mindset. It doesn't ask us to abandon our goals or give up on growth. Instead, it allows us to see that true resilience and improvement come from a place of understanding and kindness. When we approach ourselves compassionately, we create a safe, supportive environment within ourselves that enables us to grow without fear of judgment or shame. Self-compassion involves three core components: mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness. Mindfulness is the practice of acknowledging our struggles without getting swept up in them. It's about noticing our pain, our stress, our sadness, and simply allowing it to exist without amplifying it or pushing it away. When we can mindfully observe our feelings, we're able to respond to them in a balanced way, rather than reacting with judgment or resistance. Mindfulness allows us to say, "This is hard right now," without feeling overwhelmed by the need to change it immediately. It gives us the space to be with ourselves in moments of difficulty and to understand that it's okay to feel how we feel. The second element, common humanity, is a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles. Often when we're going through a tough time, we fall into the trap of thinking that we're the only ones facing such difficulties, or that somehow our struggles are a reflection of personal failure. But self-compassion helps us remember that hardship is a part of the human experience, that everyone faces moments of doubt, fear, and failure. We're all on this journey together, and there's comfort in knowing that we're not isolated in our challenges. Recognizing our common humanity helps us feel connected to others, even in our moments of pain, and this connection fosters a sense of acceptance and belonging. The third element of self-compassion is self-kindness, which is perhaps the most challenging for many of us. Self-kindness means talking to ourselves the way we would talk to someone we care about. When we make a mistake, feel disappointed, or encounter failure, self-kindness allows us to respond with words like, "It's okay, this is part of life," rather than "I'm not good enough." This kind of gentle self-talk isn't about denying reality or avoiding responsibility. It's about giving ourselves permission to be human, to make mistakes, and to learn from them without adding unnecessary guilt or shame. Another crucial aspect of self-compassion is its ability to help us let go of perfectionism. Perfectionism tells us that we should be flawless, that we shouldn't show any weakness, and that anything less than perfect is unacceptable. But striving for perfection is exhausting and often leads to burnout, frustration, and a constant feeling of inadequacy. Self-compassion, on the other hand, reminds us that imperfection is not only okay, it's natural. By accepting our imperfections, we free ourselves from the constant pressure to measure up to impossible standards. We allow ourselves to set realistic goals, to try our best, and to forgive ourselves when things don't go as planned. Forgiveness, both toward ourselves and others, is another powerful tool within self-compassion. When we're hard on ourselves, we often carry guilt or regret about past decisions or actions. Self-compassion encourages us to forgive ourselves, to let go of past mistakes, and to move forward with a sense of renewed purpose. Forgiving ourselves doesn't mean ignoring our actions or pretending they didn't happen. It means acknowledging them, learning from them, and giving ourselves the chance to move on. This forgiveness allows us to grow without being weighed down by self-blame. Self-compassion empowers us to set boundaries. Sometimes we push ourselves too hard because we're afraid of letting others down or feel obligated to meet every expectation placed upon us. But self-compassion gives us the strength to recognize our own limits and to prioritize our well-being. It allows us to say, no, I need time for myself, or I can't take on that responsibility right now without feeling guilty. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect, and self-compassion provides the inner permission we need to honor those boundaries. Self-compassion fosters resilience. When we approach ourselves with kindness and understanding, we build an inner foundation that's unshakable. Life will always have its challenges, and will inevitably face moments of hardship. But with self-compassion, we know that we have our own support, that we can rely on ourselves to be gentle and caring no matter what happens. This internal support system becomes a powerful resource that sustains us, allowing us to face difficulties with grace and strength. In this way, self-compassion becomes a transformative practice. It's not just about feeling good or giving ourselves a pass. It's about creating an internal environment where we can thrive, even in the face of adversity. It's about showing up for ourselves as we would for a dear friend, recognizing that we are worthy of care, patience, and kindness. And from this place of self-compassion, we build a resilience that enables us to rise again, again, and again. Building resilience is a journey that doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process, a practice of learning how to adapt, recover, and grow through adversity. Resilience is sometimes seen as the ability to bounce back. But true resilience is more than that. It's the ability to transform in response to challenges, to emerge from tough situations with a deeper understanding of ourselves and a new perspective on life. Resilience allows us to confront hardship without becoming hardened, to face difficulties without losing hope, and to keep moving forward with a sense of purpose. At the core of resilience is adaptability. Life is unpredictable, and no matter how much we try to plan, there will always be moments that disrupt our expectations. Resilience is the ability to adjust our mindset, our actions, and our goals in response to these changes. When we're adaptable, we can see setbacks not as the end of the road, but as a bend in it. We become more flexible, more open to new paths and possibilities. Instead of feeling defeated when something doesn't go as planned, adaptability helps us ask, what can I learn from this? Or how can I approach this differently? This shift in perspective is key to building a resilient mindset, as it encourages us to see obstacles as opportunities for growth. Another important aspect of resilience is self-awareness. To be resilient, we need to understand our own strengths and limitations, our triggers and our coping mechanisms. Self-awareness helps us recognize when we need to take a step back, to rest, or to seek support. It allows us to tune into our emotions without letting them control us. Being self-aware doesn't mean we ignore or suppress difficult feelings. Rather, it means we acknowledge them and respond to them in a constructive way. For instance, if we feel overwhelmed, self-awareness might guide us to take a break or to reach out to someone for support. This practice of tuning into ourselves strengthens our resilience by helping us address our needs before they escalate into something unmanageable. Resilience is also deeply connected to our sense of purpose and values. When we know what truly matters to us, we have a source of motivation that keeps us going, even when things are tough. A sense of purpose can provide a why that sustains us through hardship. Purpose gives us something to hold on to when everything else feels uncertain. It becomes a guiding light that helps us navigate through the darkness. When we align our actions with our values, we create a life that feels meaningful and intentional, which strengthens our ability to endure challenges. Purpose and values act as a compass, reminding us that our efforts are worthwhile and that, no matter how difficult things become, we are moving towards something meaningful. A crucial part of resilience is learning to regulate our emotions. When we're faced with stress, it's easy to become overwhelmed by fear, anger, or sadness. Emotional regulation doesn't mean ignoring these feelings, but managing them in a way that allows us to function and make sound decisions. This might involve practices like deep breathing, journaling, or talking with someone we trust. By learning to calm ourselves in times of distress, we build the capacity to respond to challenges rather than react impulsively. Emotional regulation also involves cultivating a sense of hope and optimism. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or being overly positive. Rather, it means believing that, with time and effort, things can improve. Hope allows us to see beyond the immediate difficulty and to trust in the possibility of a better future. Resilience also relies on our ability to build strong, supportive relationships. Human connection is a powerful force that can help us endure hardship. When we have people we trust, people who can offer empathy, encouragement, and perspective, we're better equipped to face challenges. Resilient people know that they don't have to go it alone. They reach out when they need help, and they're also willing to support others in return. Relationships provide a sense of community and remind us that we're not isolated in our struggles. Having someone to lean on during tough times not only lightens the burden, but also strengthens our own resilience by creating a network of shared support. An often overlooked component of resilience is self-compassion. Resilient people recognize that they're not perfect, and they're okay with that. When we're compassionate with ourselves, we're more forgiving of our mistakes, more understanding of our limitations, and more patient with our progress. Self-compassion gives us permission to be human, to experience setbacks without feeling like failures. This kindness toward ourselves creates a foundation of inner strength that helps us bounce back more readily. We become less afraid of failure and more willing to take risks, knowing that, no matter what happens, we'll treat ourselves with care and respect. Resilience also grows through a willingness to learn from every experience, even the painful ones. Every challenge carries with it a lesson, and resilient individuals are willing to look for those lessons, even when it's uncomfortable. This willingness to learn helps us adapt and evolve. We come to see failures and setbacks not as dead ends, but as stepping stones to something greater. By learning from our experiences, we build a toolkit of skills and insights that make us better equipped to handle future challenges. Resilience is sustained by gratitude. When we focus on the good in our lives, even in small doses, we foster a sense of appreciation that lifts our spirits and strengthens our resolve. Gratitude helps us balance out the difficulties we face by reminding us that there is still beauty and joy even in hardship. Practicing gratitude doesn't mean denying our pain, it simply reminds us that we can hold both joy and sorrow, both hope and struggle. Gratitude cultivates a mindset that sees beyond the immediate difficulty and acknowledges that life in all its complexity is still worth cherishing. Building resilience is a lifelong journey, but with each challenge we face, we strengthen our ability to adapt, recover, and grow. Through adaptability, self-awareness, purpose, emotional regulation, connection, self-compassion, learning, and gratitude, we create a foundation that allows us to rise again, no matter what life brings. Resilience doesn't remove challenges from our path. It gives us the strength to navigate them with courage, clarity, and hope. Embracing vulnerability is at the heart of growth, resilience, and meaningful connection. It's often misunderstood as weakness or oversharing, but in reality, vulnerability is a powerful tool that allows us to be authentically ourselves, even when it feels uncomfortable. It's the willingness to show up, to be seen fully, and to face life's challenges without hiding behind facades as perfection or control. When we open ourselves to vulnerability, we allow ourselves to experience life more deeply, to connect with others on a genuine level, and to build inner strength. Being vulnerable means acknowledging and accepting our own emotions, even the difficult ones. In a culture that often celebrates stoicism and independence, it can feel risky to admit when we're struggling or to express feelings like sadness, fear, or doubt. Yet, by embracing these emotions, we allow ourselves to be honest about our needs and experiences. Pretending that everything is fine when it's not creates distance between ourselves and others and can isolate us in our pain. Vulnerability, on the other hand, bridges this gap. It helps us say, "This is what I'm feeling," and that simple act of honesty can be transformative. When we share our feelings with others, we create an opening for empathy, support, and understanding. Vulnerability also requires us to let go of the desire to control how others perceive us. Many of us spend a significant amount of energy managing our image, trying to come across as capable, confident, or successful. But when we let go of the need to appear together all the time, we create space for genuine connection. It's easy to think that if we show our struggles, people will judge us or see us as weak, but often the opposite happens. When we're willing to share our challenges, we become more relatable, more human, and others feel safer to share their own vulnerabilities with us. Vulnerability fosters trust and deepens our relationships by creating a safe environment where both people can show up as their true selves. There's also a powerful link between vulnerability and courage. It takes immense courage to open up about our fears, failures, or insecurities. Vulnerability is not about being fearless, it's about moving forward despite our fears. Each time we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we're practicing bravery. We're telling ourselves that we're willing to face discomfort and uncertainty rather than hide from it. This courage, born from vulnerability, strengthens us over time. It allows us to take risks, pursue our dreams, and engage fully with life, knowing that even if we stumble or face criticism, we're resilient enough to handle it. Vulnerability is what gives us the freedom to grow, because growth requires stepping out of our comfort zone. Embracing vulnerability also teaches us to accept our imperfections. Many of us hold ourselves to unrealistic standards, believing that we need to be flawless in order to be worthy of love or success. But vulnerability reminds us that we don't have to be perfect to be valuable. When we allow ourselves to be seen with all our imperfections, we break free from the exhausting pursuit of perfectionism. We realize that our worth isn't dependent on meeting impossible standards. It comes from our willingness to be real. This acceptance of our imperfections helps us to develop self-compassion, which in turn builds our resilience. When we're kind to ourselves about our mistakes and flaws, we're more likely to learn from them rather than feeling crushed by them. Another essential part of vulnerability is being open to the unknown. Life is full of uncertainties, and sometimes our instinct is to protect ourselves from disappointment by avoiding risk. But when we embrace vulnerability, we allow ourselves to step into the unknown, knowing that we can't control the outcome. Whether it's starting a new relationship, pursuing a dream, or trying something new, vulnerability allows us to experience life more fully. By embracing uncertainty, we become more adaptable and resilient. We come to understand that even if things don't go as planned, we're capable of handling whatever comes our way. This openness to the unknown enriches our lives by allowing us to experience both the joys and the challenges that make life meaningful. Vulnerability also means being honest with ourselves. Often it's easier to hide behind distractions, routines, or excuses rather than confront what's really going on inside. But vulnerability asks us to look within and acknowledge our true feelings and desires, even when they're uncomfortable. It means asking ourselves the hard questions: am I really happy with this? What am I afraid of? What do I truly want? This self-reflection can be difficult, but it's a necessary part of living authentically. When we're honest with ourselves, we're better able to make choices that align with our values and bring us closer to a fulfilling life. Vulnerability is the foundation of empathy. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we become more compassionate and understanding toward others. Having experienced our own struggles and insecurities, we're better equipped to empathize with those around us. Vulnerability helps us see beyond appearances and understand that everyone has their own battles, even if they're not immediately visible. This empathy fosters deeper, more meaningful connections with others and helps to create a supportive community where people feel seen, heard, and valued. Lastly, vulnerability is a pathway to creativity and innovation. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we're more willing to take creative risks, to put our ideas out there, and to face the possibility of failure. Creativity requires us to embrace the unknown, to experiment, and to be open to criticism. When we're vulnerable, we're less focused on achieving a perfect outcome and more focused on the process itself. This mindset encourages innovation and allows us to approach problems with fresh ideas and perspectives.